Hi, this is Ed Tracy with EdwardCTracey.com, and I'm here at Chris Vaughn's new headquarters in Rockdale County for the 4th District, and I want to just say thank you for inviting me here today. I know you're about to have your grand opening,
Yep.
and I know it's an exciting time, and it's a beautiful office. We'll hopefully be here when you have the grand opening here in a couple of days and show people on EdwardCTracey.com. But I'm excited for the first time in a long time about this 4th congressional race because there's a lot of talk on the street about the impact that you're having from DeKalb County to Newton County, and I know you've been working at it for months and months and months.
A year.
A
solid year now.
It's hard to believe, and I remember the night that you were in North Carolina.
No,
where were you?
Chattanooga.
Chattanooga,
Tennessee.
you were at a wedding?
Yeah, I was at a wedding.
And when we talked on the phone, and we didn't know each other then, and I was trying to find you, and you called me, and we talked about running, and I asked you a couple of questions. One was, do you have the heart to really work hard and do it? And the other was, do you think you can win? And I think your response was that you did think you could win, and you want to expound on that a little bit. I think people need to know, because it's a year later now.
It's a year later.
And how does that today line up with what you thought a year ago when you got into the race?
It's like anything. Anything you start off with today, to my opinion, you always have these great visions and hopes and dreams, and sometimes walking anything out can be a little different. The 4th is a different animal than most congressional districts. I've always said, and I still believe it, that in 2012 is a unique opportunity to win the 4th and defeat Hank Johnson. He's been a very ineffective congressman. I get that said to me time and time again at different events from every cross-section, Republican, Democrat, Independents, Libertarians. They all feel the same. It is a unique atmosphere we have nationally. It is a unique debate we're having politically as far as the presidential race. Unemployment is still higher in the state of Georgia than it is nationally. It's higher in DeKalb, Gwinnett, Rockdale, Newton than it is in the state of Georgia. There's just kind of that perfect storm. I told somebody the other day, and with God's good grace, me winning November 6th, it's not going to be that I've been so good or I've worked so hard. I really do believe this. It's going to be just that I was here, if that makes sense. There's a scripture that says, many are called and few are chosen. I heard a guy say one time, he said, what's the difference between called and chosen? He said, well, he calls everybody. He said, the chosen ones are just the ones who sometimes just didn't leave. They only got chosen because they're the only ones left to work with. But the 4th has a unique opportunity this year. And I get encouragement everywhere I go, whether it's Stone Mountain, Decatur. There seems to be, even across what most people would call racial lines, a discontent and a desire to see a new representation and someone really try to bring a heart of service to the 4th District, and instead of it constantly being just the same old, same old.
Every year that I've been in the 4th District, and the lines, living in Rockdale County, the lines have changed 3 times since I've lived here in 13 years. We've had started out with John Linder as our congressman, then it changed to Scott. We were in the 13th for a little while, and then we had Cynthia McKinney, and then we had the judge who Republicans helped get elected.
Denise.
And then as soon as she was elected, the Democrats, I think, made up their mind that she wasn't going to be reelected, and then she didn't run for reelection.
Well, she ran for Senate.
Well, she ran for Senate, but didn't run for reelection to the House.
Correct.
And that's when Hank Johnson came in, and I just...
No. Cynthia came in again.
Cynthia came in again, you're right.
Cynthia came in after Denise.
Very good. I'm just testing. And so...
and the Republicans actually helped again in that primary.
Yes.
Crossover and elect Hank.
Yeah,
because
the next election.
The next election, that would have been 06. And,
yes.
and I had the conversation last week with the gentleman. He looked at me and he said, man, he says, I helped raise money for Denise. He goes, I helped raise money for Hank. He goes, I'm a Republican. He says, but I got tired of that level of service. And then he stopped and he said, but you know, he said, sadly, I thought Hank would be an effective congressman for our district. And then he kind of looked at me, so.
Well, when Hank Johnson came to Rockdale County, in one of the very few campaign appearances he's ever made here, with an opponent on the stage, which we'll get to in a little bit, he sounded very, very good at the time in 2006. Sounded like he was going to represent all the people, sounded like he was fair-minded. I've had personal conversations with him. He's visited our church. I know that he's a Buddhist. I know that he visits churches in campaign mode and things like that. And just a little personal story with him, because I think it's important, is that as Christians, we pray for all our leaders, whether they're Democrat, Republican, whether it's Obama, who I don't like because of what he's done to our nation, or Hank Johnson, because I just think, like you, that he's totally ineffective. Hank is a very nice man, but I don't think he's a good or a great congressman. And so he came to our church, and I felt moved to give him my Bible. And I knew he was Buddhist, and it was American Patriots Bible by Pastor Richard Lee. I carry it around pretty much everywhere I go, and I just felt like the Lord moved me to give it to him, so I did, and he thanked me. Fast forward to 2 years, this year, my wife ran into him, and she introduced herself, and before she could finish, when she was starting to say my husband, he said, the one that gave me the Bible, and he said, I read it from cover to cover. He said, side note, however, I don't agree with what it says in the margins. So what he's saying is the history of the church and the history of our nation that's intertwined into that particular Bible, he doesn't agree with. So he doesn't agree with our founding, he doesn't agree with freedom, liberty, essentially that man can work and gain wealth. Not to do a dissertation, but I think it kind of adds up to his record. And you and I have talked about his record, and it's very partisan.
Very partisan. I like to say he's probably the most prejudiced congressman, at least in Georgia, that I can see, and possibly, because if it is a Republican bill that even has bipartisan support, he, by and large, and if you pull his track record out for the last 5.5 years, and I have it in my briefcase, I'm always amazed. In 07, 08, 09, and 10, those were democratically controlled years of the House under Pelosi. It is,
let me stop there. But Bush was president in the new Congress came in 7. Mm-hmm. And so Bush was president in 7 and 8. And Obama got elected at the end of 8 and began his first term in 9. But the Pelosi Congress, the Republicans voted out their own congressman because they didn't do right in 06. So Pelosi took over Congress in 07, Reid took over the Senate in 07. The economy was booming up until that year. Go on from there.
But you can watch his record, 07, 08, 09, and 010, democratically controlled House. The majority of his votes are yes. Every bill that hits the floor is a Democratic bill. And I understand that's the way the House works. But as soon as 10 ends and 11 starts, now it's a Republican Congress. For the last 2 years, he's voted no on practically every bill. And I've heard him at too many instances where, in fact, at one event, I always thought it was kind of funny, they said, what can be done to stop the gridlock? And I actually heard this question last week. Somebody posed to him, what can be done to stop the gridlock in Washington so that, Congress can work together, House, Senate, and the executive branch? And he just goes, well, it's just the Republicans. It's just the Republicans. We just need to vote out every Republican out there. And the true test of leadership is not making sure that everybody agrees with you. That's called dictatorship. The true test of leadership is making sure that you work with people, create alliances, create paradigms to where the goal is not to defend a party, not to defend a platform, but to defend and work for people. And he has always been very prejudiced. One of the last, in fact, you shot video at it, Legal Women Voters event. That was his first comment. You know, which I thought was funny at that one. They said, what can be done? He said, well, we need to get rid of Mitch McConnell and the Senate Republicans. Well, I don't know why you need to get rid of the Senate Republicans. They're in the minority in the Senate.
Right, they can't
really,
they try.
they can't do anything. So the logic of it is very disjointed and very partisan. And the other side of that is I like to ask people, if he was doing such a good job, how come residents in the 4th have to go to other districts to get constituent work accomplished? And I have that statement from different people. I've actually had 2 different people come up at my events, and I'm not a congressman. I'm a nobody. I'm just a citizen. And they'll ask me how they should handle their issue. And one lady in particular, I spent about 30 minutes and mostly listened, and then just told her, apologized, I can't fix it or do it. I said, but this is what I would do. And I told her the people I would call. And she looked at me, she said, well, I appreciate it. She said, you've done more for me in the last 20 minutes, 30 minutes, than anybody in the 4th District office has. And to me, that's just sad. That's just a tragically sad state that someone would have. And so, you know, ultimately for me, I'm here because I feel led to do it.
Well,
some people don't understand that. But
let's talk about the elephant in the room. There is a racial divide in the 4th District.
Yeah.
Not so much in Rockdale County, because I think here, white people vote for black people, and black people vote for white people. And there are people here that are here because they came to Rockdale County, have a better life.
Rockdale's a great community.
Get their kids educated, and neighborhoods are integrated, and it is a great community. And even though we can disagree with people politically here, nobody's going to hate you. I've got all, the signs of the people I represent in my yard, and the former head of the Republican Party here in Rockdale County lives a few doors down, and the Democratic Party lives a few doors down, and he's got all his Democrat signs in his yard. And when we see each other, we talk, we're friendly, we've been to meetings together, we've actually talked about solutions that we could agree on together. And to me, that's the way it is. We can be Democrat and Republican, but the thing that has always brought Americans together is the center core of America. 99% at one time were Christian. And so we had God as the ultimate one, and there's lots of scripture that covers, how we should work together and things like that. So as Christians, we always had something bigger to work towards. And so that brought people together. And last night I was at a function for One Heart Ministries, over 350 people there. And they talked about the bringing down of denominational walls for one holy purpose, to serve God, and that their ministry has grown because of that. And the thing I took away, thinking a politically minded person, was, wow, if we could do as George Washington wanted us to do, which was not to align behind party, but behind country, we could tear down that denominational political wall and work for the better of the country. But we have this racial divide here that it seems like before you, Chris Vaughn, anybody would even know you, they first find out that you're running as a Republican, and their ears go tone deaf and don't want to hear anything you've said. And I know you've worked hard, and update us as to any those barriers that you've crossed.
Yeah, there's always, it's funny that you mentioned that about Washington, because there's a book by Chernow called Washington Life, and I'm at that point in the book where the war's over, and he truly argued, please, let's don't become party people, let's become very unified for the common good, which is one of the reasons why I use that phrase. The 4th District is not about a party. It's about serving people with solutions. It's about truly taking care of people and not being so defined by that, and I'll use that church term, the denominationalisms of Republican or Democrat, and not working with each other. Which, my opinion is, it's always this is a theological point, it's always the work of evil in our life to create divisions and divides. Because when there is unity in a group, great things happen. But as long as you can keep everything segmented and torn up, you divide and conquer. And so there's always that, I think, that spiritual aspect. It is, I'm the white guy running in the 4th District, although I love to point out I had a guy I overheard 2 gentlemen in Newton County one day talking about me, and they were pretty loud. They were older, So they thought they were whispering, and they were going back and forth about who I was. And at that time, most people did not realize that the 4th had been redrawn in Newton. So they thought that it was either I was going to run against Austin Scott or Paul Brown. Then one gentleman says, no, the new 4th. The new 4th. This guy's running against Hank Johnson. And the other guy goes, my gosh, he's white. And as God is my witness, the other guy goes, well, he's not that white. And so I don't know what that means. I really don't care. For me, I don't see the color. I really don't. My church is interracial.
What is the name of your church?
Grace Summit Church. It's in McDonough, Georgia. I live in South Rockdale, so our church has always been in McDonough anyway, so it's in Henry County. But I just don't look at life that way. I don't approach it that way, and I try not to. And I really do. I try not to approach people on any level. I really don't. I don't care if you're rich or poor.
How do we get beyond? There's still some.
There's some hard prejudices in the 4th.
And great civil rights leaders today that are still living in the 50s and 60s that are still preaching from their pulpits in Atlanta, which spills into the 4th because DeKalb is in the 4th. And,
my opinion is, as a pastor, you just have to address it. You just have to, I made a joke one time at a church that I was prejudiced. And everybody looked at me. It's about 50% white, 50% black, about 300 people there that night. And I said, I am prejudiced. I said, sometimes I can't stand white people. And everybody looked at me, I said, because white people can't clap on beat. And everybody laughed, and all the choir stood up and was clapping. And, the thing is, there are differences. There's no question there's differences. There's differences of culture. There's differences of history. But that's the beauty of our country. That's, to me, the best part of it, because it is under that common good that we come together. And thankfully, ultimately, long term, it was under the covering or umbrella of the Judeo-Christian ethics and Christianity. But to me, you just have to address it.
This, to me, is the reason why everyone says Republicans can't win in the 4th District is because of this race issue. And I want to just say to people that I don't see a reason for it. I don't see it. Matter of fact, I've been writing on my website about black Americans need to come back home to the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, and the two of them were enemies in the beginning. And Frederick Douglass, matter of fact, my hometown, New Bedford, Massachusetts, is where Frederick Douglass escaped to and resided, became a free man. And we built a memorial to Frederick Douglass some years ago there, and the home in which he lived and all of that. We celebrate that where I come from. Lewis Temple, who, as a city councilor, I helped build a statue of Lewis Temple to memorialize him because he was a capitalist. He actually was a blacksmith who changed the wealth of the whaling industry and made it. He invented a toggle harpoon. It was the first time the harpoons, the whalers used to go out and throw that harpoon, and it used to come back out of the whale. And Lewis Temple, a young blacksmith in New Bedford, Massachusetts, invented the toggle part of it and revolutionized the whaling industry. That when they threw that harpoon, the whale couldn't get away anymore. New Bedford became the richest city per capita in the United States because of an invention by a young entrepreneurial blacksmith. And we see that same entrepreneurial spirit in young black people today in DeKalb, Rockdale, Gwinnett, Newton, owning businesses, trying to start businesses. But the reality of it is, just because Hank Johnson's black doesn't mean he understands business. Just because Chris Vaughn is white doesn't mean he understands the plight of a black man, but he also, vice versa, the black man can't understand the plight of a white man. How do we convince black people that just because you're a white Republican that you don't have empathy for this situation?
Well, so for me, this is a churchism. And I always say, and I do believe this, church is the greatest small microcosm of society. It's a community. I've even heard people, and they'll say, well, a Pentecostal church doesn't understand the needs of a Baptist church, or the Catholic church doesn't understand the needs of a... That's just so false.
It is.
A church is a church. They need money, they need people, they have a mission, they have a goal. The needs are the same. It is all within our own internalized mechanism. I don't care if you're a white family, black family, Asian family, Hispanic family, Somalian family, Ethiopian family, a Vietnamese family in the 4th District. We all want the same thing. We want a good job. We want to take care of our kids. We want good education. We want our civil rights protected. And by and large, every group I just mentioned are tired of the federal government and local government dictating everything we do. But then we always have that. Now, my opinion of the reason why most people don't want to be honest about that is they like the power structure that they get from. I know of a denomination, and this is up until just recently, they had still a two-party platform of meetings. They had the regular meetings, and then in that state they had what they called the black church meetings. Now, all the leaders would always go back and forth, and a lot of the people would go back and forth. And for years, they tried to get rid of it and bring it all back into one roof. What's funny is some of the people and the leaders in the group, the African American, they didn't want to take out and put it all back into one, because there was a certain amount of leadership and authority and power and money. I mean, that's usually what it gets down to. It's to me,
And that's okay as long as at the end of the day
it serves people. I mean,
it's serving the people they're like-minded.
But again, I really don't. In my church, I don't look at people and think, well, this family has different needs than this family. This is a white family. This is a black family. So to me, that is the craziest befuddlement in my head. They're just families. They're just people. I've done missions trips. You go to Panama. You go to the Indian family, and you go to the family in the city of Panama. They still want the same thing. They want a good home. They want to be able to provide for their family. People are people. And my opinion is it's always easier to appease your own conscience and say, well, there's a little bit of a difference, and we have to so there may be some cultural difference in some ways. That's like, I think it's funny, being from the South. Anytime I go up north, everybody mocks me for being a redneck and all. But it's so funny. You go up north, you can get soul food. What's so funny is I never knew what soul food was. Wait a minute, I never understood that. That's what we ate growing up.
Yeah.
I'm like, why is this a different? And people act like, well, it's just some different. I'm like,
Well, I was just going to say, it's the same food, but it's called something different.
It's called something different. Yeah. And, but that is how we like to segment and give notoriety or give ourselves identity. I totally understand that concept.
Creole food was what, from a lot of Cape Verdean influence in my hometown, and it was Creole food, and it was very good. But let's talk about, we only have a few minutes left.
Wait, so I do want to address this, but the way to overcome it is just be honest about it. I believe it, and quit, and I think as, whatever Republicans, we got to quit sidestepping the issue and address it.
Isn't honesty good for the soul?
It is, and then the other side too is, you look at it, and that's the other side too, I think we have to hold the mirror up. If unemployment in DeKalb, I believe right now is about 10 and a half. If you're a black male,
well, that's according to the way that they're counting.
Correct, but according to the way they're counting.
They changed the math about 5 or 6 years
But it's still, for a black gentleman, it's still 14, 15.
Right.
And if you're under the age of 21, it can be as high as 25 to 30.
And 50%.
And so, it is astronomically high. And
underemployment is not even counted.
And the other part that frustrates me, as a, quote, white guy, we have to address that. I don't care if somebody's, I really don't. White, black, red, or green, yellow, I like the old song, red and yellow, black and white, we're all precious in His sight. If you approach it from that, you have to address it. You have to be honest. And I believe it's given a disservice. There is not. That's the part that I love Dr. King's quote. The most prejudiced hour in America is church. And that's to me, one of the greatest blessings of probably the last 15, 20 years of my life, watching the extreme integration of churches. And I heard a minister call it one time, and I agree with it. It's the bouquet of God. It's a little bit of everything, of society, of mankind, and the differences all put together.
Don't you think it's the responsibility of, well, you're younger than me, but don't you think it's responsibility of my generation as we get older? You're at the tail end of the baby boomers.
I am.
All right. So the baby boom generation, who, following the greatest generation, that sacrificed everything to save the world, everything, millions of lives and everything, to now just hand it over to that type of European, socialistic, Russian, communistic mentality of we're going to take everything from you and give you back a little, and we're going to decide for you. I cannot believe that black people, white people, liberal or conservative, want government telling them and spoon-feeding them everything they can do in life. Frederick Douglass was about getting freed so he could make his own decisions, so that he could speak and write freely and not have someone putting him in jail because of it. Socialism and communism all lead to that. One of Putin's opponents was jailed a couple of years ago because he dared just run against them in a primary.
You know, there's actually the big thing right now nationally about the school lunches. And the schools are actually telling the USDA or whatever, and they're actually telling the families that the school lunches are the model that every family should use when they create their own meals. So now you have another level of where government's trying to dictate what we do in every area of our life.
Forget soul food then.
Oh yeah, totally, totally. Forget anything that we consider good.
Right.
Which I mean, everything has its.
Well, in New York City, Bloomberg, who was a Republican, now an independent, has become the nanny of America, telling people they can't drink more than 16 ounces of soda at any one time. Stores cannot sell it to anybody more than that rate.
But you can get a refill.
You can get
that's the idiocy of the thing. You can get a refill.
Let's get on to...
Or you can buy 3 drinks.
Well, I guess you could. They might card you, though.
That's exactly what I mean.
But yet they allow kids to smoke on the street that are under 17. Nobody's policing that. Let's talk a little bit about what you think Chris Vaughn in January of 2013, what would be the most important initiative that you would start out with? Let's back up one. It's January the 9th, 2013. And someone who was a Hank Johnson supporter calls you and says, I need your help from your office. Is there going to be any repercussions because they said they were a Hank Johnson supporter? Or what does your office look like? What does your constituent service group look like? How are you going to service the people of
I guess I try to, my full-time job is I pastor a church. I look at it that way. When somebody calls, I actually did a funeral Sunday. This is 3 days ago for a family who I haven't been their pastor or staff pastor in 7 years, but I knew the family. You serve people at the point of need where they are. My vision, my goal is that number one is I want to have constituent committees in each of the counties that I kind of report to, and they have my cell. They can get in touch. People in that county can get in touch with them if they have issues that they need immediately. And so we would meet with them regularly so that we communicate to them what's happening in Washington and locally, and so that they also can let me know and the office know what they need. Secondly, to that, there are a lot of federal programs, and I don't mean like programs as far as just bringing money in, but programs for job search, finding, and also education. And so number one of our constituent representatives will be regularly in that position to help any person in the district access those programs, know where they are. And one of the ways I want to do that is, and I've heard, I had 2 people tell me that they've never heard of a congressman ever doing this, and to me this is about the most simple, basic thing, is I want to, kind of rotate through the district at churches where we take a different church once a week, and we set up an office there. And to not only the people in that church, but to the people in that area, they will know that we're there. So instead of them having to try to figure out where the office is, what time we're there, our office will have someone represent us there. If they need any help with their whatever constituent services they will, we will not just wait for them to come to us, but we will proactively.
Well, what
go
about
to
the
them.
separation of church and state myth that the atheists are trying to push on America they wouldn't cry.
Well, I'll just say this, sue me when I get there. I don't care. I really don't. I'll use a library, I'll use a church, I'll use a synagogue, and as long as and I'll use a mosque.
So you're talking about
I'll be honest. I sincerely mean I have no problem with that, because the point at the end of the day is making sure that you serve those people and you help them. And I really don't, I don't know why that would have any issue between separation of church and state for a church.
Well, there is
to
no
offer
separation.
Correct,
Of
I know.
state.
But I mean,
It was a trick question.
But for a church to offer that and to allow us to use that,
I
just
think
like
it's
they
a
would
great
to the
idea.
Rotary, just like I actually asked somebody, and I asked them, I said, why did some? I said, is that wrong? I said, could you get sued for that? And they go, well, I don't
Sued
know.
for breathing.
But they go, well, I don't know. And they stop. I can't get over this. They go, we've never had anybody suggest that. I said, well, dear Lord, I said, it cuts down on overhead. It cuts down on office space. I said, you could just have mobile offices all over I said, even have it on a rotational basis. I said, and secondly, I said, what better way to get to know all the cross-sectional demographics of the 4th District by visiting all those churches and synagogues and mosques and being available to them. And I mean, that would be part of what I do. And so anyway, so that's the other side. And then and also just making sure that we're home. I joked about this. I saw a Facebook post yesterday, and Congressman Johnson is in Washington, D.C. right now.
Are they in recess right
They're
now?
in recess right now. There's nobody there to be.
Is that so he doesn't have to debate you?
I guess. I don't know what his reason is, but his point was he's in Washington ready to work for the people and get jobs.
Folks, don't you think that having been a congressman now, he's had 3 terms,
This is ending his 3rd term, 5.5 years.
that he owes it to you and me to come here and debate his opponent in a real debate? And, I hosted a debate for the Republican nominees, you and Greg and Catherine Davis, and nobody was attacked, nobody was treated unfairly. In I think the hour and a half that we debated, hour and 40 minutes that we had this debate, and you can see it on my website, you can see that every possible question, from national defense to jobs to faith to all of the different questions were asked. Everybody answered them. And no one went away from that thinking that it was just an awful experience. But doesn't our congressman owe it to us to come back here and not be in a protected environment where you can only ask a particular question at a League of Women Voters event where they get 2 questions and 2 minutes to answer it? That's all we get every 2 years is 4 minutes from our congressman? And he only goes to constituencies where it's set up, where he's protected, and he's not going to be asked any tough questions? I don't even think he showed up at the PBS debate.
He did not. I wasn't a part of
Public
his,
Broadcasting.
but he didn't show up to that.
He didn't show up to that. Folks, even if you're for him, you have to make your government officials, elected officials, accountable to you. And if you keep letting him escape and not debating his opponent, you never know what he's really doing in Washington, because he's saying one thing in a protected environment, but if he's asked some real questions.
Well, the other side too, he is the 7th highest spender in the House.
The 7th highest.
7th highest.
What does he spend his money on?
It's a lot of cars, a lot of,
What do you mean by that, cars? Does
they
he buy
wouldn't-
cars? Does he
I guess
rent
they
cars?
lease them for the office for,
Are they limousines or?
I think they're Lincolns and, whatever.
Just so he can,
I have,
I don't know.
but like one of my other commitments I always make to everyone in the 4th.
Have you all gotten a car from Hank Johnson?
No. Is I intend to stay in the 4th. Everybody always jokes. I had a guy in my neighborhood joke one day. He said, now Chris, when you win, when are you moving? And I looked at him, I said, I'm not moving. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, I'm going to live in my house. I said, I still intend on pastoring my church, which I know will create, some, logistical things that...
Founding Fathers all did that.
They found, Muhlenberg.
Yeah.
Love him. I know you did a quote from him the other day.
Yes.
Love him. But that's one of my convictions. Had a young African-American girl at a restaurant one day, and we were talking. I gave her a card, and we were talking. She made 2 comments I've never forgotten. She said, first of all, she was 26. She says, first of all, you're the first guy I've ever met in my restaurant who's running for office, whoever took the time to talk to me. She says, now we have events all the time in here. She says, I see all types of candidates. She says, nobody's ever talked to me. So that impressed her. Then she looked at me and she goes, but I got a question. She goes, when you win, how can I get in touch with you? I said, well, you can call the office, make an appointment. I said, heck, just show up at the church. Wait on me to walk out at the end of the service. I said, I'll be there. And she kind of laughed and she goes, but it was a telling comment to me. She goes, you're serious? I said, yes, ma'am, I'm serious. I said, I'll be where I'm at. And I said, you know, I have no intention of changing that lifestyle. I love Georgia. I love my home. I love Rockdale County. I say this all the time. I live in the best section of Rockdale, I believe, South Rockdale. And the reason I say that is I am 30, 40 minutes from everything in Atlanta, basically. Depending upon traffic, sometimes an hour, unless you go real north Atlanta. But I love it here. It's where my life is.
Part country, part city.
Part city, but I mean, I'm 30 minutes from everything. McDonough, Newton, Covington, Rockdale, Lithonia, even if I consider the Brave Stadium, 50 minutes. I mean, it's just a great area. My daughter's got a Georgia perimeter. My son's in, we homeschool, but his life is here, our church is here. So I have no intention of disappearing into the woodwork or going to Washington to take care of business while people are in recess to dodge the issue. And so, and I think that's one of the levels. I had a sitting politician look at me at the last League of Women Voters event. And to his credit, I'll give that, Hank was there, Hank Johnson. And they came up to me after it was over, they said, well, something's up. And I said, why do you say that? They go, I've seen him more in 2 weeks than I've seen him in 5 years as an elected official in Rockdale County. Mm-hmm. And so my opinion from that statement is, I don't believe he's as secure as everybody likes to think. I know he's not as well funded as everybody thinks he is at this point.
Well, the numbers have changed. I mean, and Newton is a new district for him. People have never voted for him
Southern
before.
Gwinnett is all new.
Southern Gwinnett's all new, and South Rockdale,
South Rockdale.
Which used to be in Westmoreland's district, is all new. So he's having to work, but I will tell you this. I'm all over Rockdale County, as you know. I haven't run into him anywhere.
Yeah.
I think he makes appearances where they're very public and very short, and where he doesn't get any tough questions. And he'll get a newspaper reporter to announce that he was here, and he's off and running back into.
Yeah, I got a friend, and he's from Newton County, but he said, my gosh, he said he's always going to something. He said he even, he'll show up at something. So I got to leave. I've got another appointment. And I understand some of that, but the other side too is.
You don't have to answer questions when you do that.
But you do need to give an account.
Yes.
Again, I look at things very much in the context of church. Nobody's going to go to a church where you never see the guy, he never shows up, and there's no accountability. Yeah. And if you do, in my opinion, you need some help because nobody expects that, and they expect a higher level of service.
Let's close out with this interview with this. There's only, what's today?
34 days.
34 days to go. That's 34 days. You need money because this is a very diverse district as far as media goes. And to reach all the media, you need money to place advertisements. B, I know you need volunteers. You got this beautiful office now, which is just a very phenomenal space. It's clean and bright. And what is this? Actually, it's at the corner of Flat Shoals and Edwards, I think it is.
Yeah. It's 3030 Edwards Drive.
3030 Edwards Drive.
Conyers.
In Conyers. It's right next to the Tokyo restaurant.
Correct.
And so a lot of people go to Tokyo.
Everybody
so knows that.
I got to be honest, there's more traffic in this parking lot than I've seen in many places and on this road.
Well,
Holly
likes Japanese food.
I guess. And sushi.
And it's the access road along I-20
Correct.
to get to Newton and,
Correct.
and back and forth. So it's centrally located for Newton and Rockdale counties. Plus, there's the Rockdale headquarters where all your bump sticker signs and everything else in Old Town and in Newton County.
Newton County has a GOP headquarters.
And DeKalb.
DeKalb has near Chandler Tucker. There's one, in fact, I go there today.
So you have stuff there as
There's
well.
also one Gwinnett. Right. It's actually in Lawrenceville, which is a little bit above the 4th, the new lines, but it serves the Gwinnett area.
Okay, so there's plenty of places where you can go and get his bumper stickers, his signs. I even saw T-shirts at a couple of the offices. So all of that, like I said, you need money.
They can go to Chris Vaughn for Congress.com and sign up and let us know. They can give online. They can sign up to work or help online. And we desperately could use it.
October 8th has been sponsored the last 4 years, so I think it'd be the 5th year for pastors to speak out, black, white, whatever, to challenge the Johnson. Huh?
No, that would be 8. That was the first Sunday.
Yeah, the 8th. The 8th is...
No, 7th. That's 7th.
Is it the 7th this coming Sunday? Yeah. Okay, the 7th is this coming Sunday. And over 1,200 pastors have now signed up where they're going to be in defiance to what was called the Johnson Rule. Lyndon Johnson wanted to silence certain groups, so he put this rule and IRS rules and all of that, where if a pastor spoke out, that
they could lose their 501c3.
They could lose their 501c3. It was intended for something else, but then it was applied to pastors. But here's the thing. It's another myth, like separation of church and state.
It's never been.
No one has ever been challenged on it. And so 1,200 pastors across the United States, both in black churches, white churches, non-denominational churches, denominational churches, integrated churches, have signed up, and it should be 40,000 signed up, are going to speak out this Sunday and challenge the IRS. They're wanting it to go to the Supreme Court to get this. And so pastors,
some of the churches are actually sending a CD of their message to the IRS.
Yes. Will you be speaking at?
I actually, you know what's funny is this Sunday, I won't this Sunday, I will the next Sunday. This Sunday I'm actually guest speaking for another church.
Okay.
So
that would be not correct to go and make a political statement in somebody else's church.
And it's not even in the 4th district, so it's far from.
So anyway, I just believe in that wholeheartedly. We talked about Muhlenberg a few minutes ago, and Pastor Muhlenberg, during the Revolution, went in. He's part of the Black Robe Brigade, and he went in to church one Sunday and gave the sermon on Ecclesiastes, in which it says a time for peace and there's a time for war. And as he said that, he tore off his black robe, and under it he had a colonial uniform on. And at that time, people actually brought their guns to church with them. And so, talk about clinging to your religion and your guns.
Yeah.
And he picked up his musket or his rifle or whatever and said, "Who is with me?" And the men in that church all marched out of that church and joined George Washington's army. That sermon was so powerful, it was read in other churches all over the country, 13 states at the time, 13 colonies. And pastors led the revolution. I'm calling on pastors like you, and you are, because you're running for Congress, to lead this revolution, not against anyone, but for America.
Yeah. You know, somebody asked me one day, they said, "Well, why are you running against Hank Johnson?" I said, "I'm not running against Hank Johnson. I said, I'm running for the 4th district." And to me, there's a whole difference there, you know. Now, of course, I am running against him as far as the ballot and all, but I'm running for certain values and principles that resonate in every voter in the 4th district. And those are the essential liberties that we hold dear. And so, you know,
family values.
Family values. You know, I mean, our family
values.
Job,
security.
You know, and also not destroying our long-term potential as a nation. You know, anybody who loves to tell me, and I even had somebody look at me one day and they said, "How can you get people to, you know, turn off the well or turn off the spigot on the money for the government?" And I mean it real quickly. I just use guilt very quickly, because it's an unrighteous thing for me to destroy my children's heritage. It's an unrighteous thing for any mother out there. And I always think it's funny because you hear certain disparaging comments about certain groups. People will say, you know, that this group's on welfare or this group's on welfare, which I think it's funny. You know, there's more white people on welfare than there are black people in America. If you want to study numbers and statistics. Right. More importantly is the fact that the values that we hold dear cross every line. And those are the things that I do fight for. And hopefully fight to restore those to the 4th district so that there's not as much this group against this group. I always loved what Golda Meir said one time. This is, I believe it was the late 50s. Prime Minister of Israel. She looked at somebody and she said, you know, if y'all will just leave us alone, we'll kill each other. She said, but as long as you fight us and give us a common enemy to band against, she says, we will fight you. And that was really almost the heart of George Washington at the end of the Revolutionary War, is that the people would have a national sense to band together and quit the pettiness and the...
Look at the week after 9/11, how
correct, you know,
how Americans came together.
And it's sad to think that there are people who manipulate it for their own good. You know, I didn't know it until just recently. I heard the story about, I think his name was Cincinnatus. He was a Roman commander of the legions. And the reason the city of Cincinnati is named after him. But George Washington is the epitome of Cincinnatus. Cincinnatus was someone who rose up in the ranks, took control, restored order to Rome.
And then handed it back.
And he walked back to his field.
Probably the only person sent him to do so.
Was Washington. And Washington, if anyone could have set up a monarchy, set up a dictatorship, it was Washington.
King George said at the time that if George Washington leaves power after his second, he was in his second term, and King George said if George Washington leaves power, he will be the greatest leader that we've ever seen in history, because no man ever gives up power.
Well, the other part talking about that is when he gave up his, you know, he was commander-in-chief. He controlled all forces nationally during this Revolutionary War. Naval, I mean, he had command, he had the right, and actually was given more power than anyone else has ever had in our nation to requisition, to, you know, back then they would just pay you to requisition supplies, you know, and he never, and it's so funny, I just heard it in this book, because he was very public about his stepping down. And actually when he read his resignation speech as the commander-in-chief, he returned to Congress the actual articles that gave him the power. So he not only returned symbolically, but he also returned in paper form that right that he had, and walked away. And the part that was so actually moving was it said all the legislators who were there for the Continental Congress, they cried because they had never witnessed anyone in their day, and in our day too. You know, we look at congressmen, you know, and you know there is a movement out called "Vote 'Em All Out." I watched a video last night. Vote 'em all out. You know, 435 congressmen, just get rid of them all. And you hate to say that, but sometimes I think that would not possibly be a bad thing for one reason. Anybody who's been there 20, 24 years, get a life. Go do something else. Quit being entrenched in power. Serve another way.
I agree. I just, and the founding fathers said that serving should be painful.
Yep.
I think to be honorable, you would want to serve your country, do your best to have an impact, serve the people whom you serve. And are you telling me out of 750,000 people in the district, the 4th district, 750,000 people in this district, that Hank Johnson's the only one smart enough, intelligent enough to serve us?
Yep.
6 years is enough. 8 years at the max to me in Congress is enough.
I think at max, if you want to do term limits, I'm not crazy about them. I think we have them. You ought to vote them out. But 6 years for Congress, 2 for Senate. That gives 12 to each. But, you know, and be done at it, but I really don't understand that. You know, that's like anybody who holds power that long.
Well, take the last 30 seconds, 45 seconds to just look at the camera and talk to the people.
I'll do
Tell
it.
them your heart.
Again, my name is Chris Vaughn. I'm running for the 4th District for Congress, and I truly mean this, and want to hopefully convey this message, that this election, more than probably any other election in my lifetime, is not about a party. It's about values, and it's about values that we hold dear, and it's about making sure that we serve people with a purpose to help and to raise their lifestyle, to make the hard choices long term. And anybody who tells you right now there are not hard choices facing our nation, they are a liar to you. And so that someone has to be honest to the populace of the 4th District and say, here's where we are, and here's what is going to have to be done to make sure that our posterity, as the founding documents say, is protected. Our children and our children's children have an inheritance of freedom and opportunity in this great country. I'd appreciate your vote November 6th. I'd appreciate your help. Again, you can find out more about us at chrisvaughnforcongress.com. You can find out not only there, but you can sign up, you can contribute, but you can be a part of a true changing time in our nation's history. 2012 is a year of great change. We have seen that nationally. We have seen that internationally. There is a great movement in the world of change. And I believe in the 4th District we need to change it to a representative who has your values and wants to serve you in a godly atmosphere and in an atmosphere to where you are first and I will be second. So I appreciate your vote November 6th. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you letting me in your office and having this discussion, and I hope God protects you in the next 34 days, and Hank Johnson as well. I hope that you can get the debate that you've been seeking with him, that we can have an open, honest discussion about the issues and the values of people in the 4th District. It's not how John Kennedy said, not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. We have to have change this attitude of, free phones, and he's going to give me this, and he's going to give me that, to what are we doing to sacrifice for our country so that our children don't have $52,000 in debt the day they're born, which they have right now. So I thank you for your honesty, your integrity, just Godspeed. And folks, this is EdwardCTracey with EdwardCTracey.com, and today we've had a candidate for the 4th District of Congress for the Georgia, Chris Vaughn. I think, does it show up Chris Vaughn?
It does, yeah.
So you'll see Chris Vaughn on the ballot. Early voting starts on the 15th, I think, the 15th of October. Look in your county to see where early voting is. I think we've got a list on our website, or we'll have it up shortly. And come view the other interviews that we've done together. If you want to go back to the first one we did when Chris first announced to now, you can see he's consistent and that he says the same things. It's in his heart. So thanks again for watching. This is Ed Tracey with EdwardCTracey.com TV Live.